welcome to another benefit of the Doud Review. I am your host, Adam Doud, and joining me is co-host Cliff. Cliff, what's up?
What's going on? Here to talk about a phone that most of you don't have access to, but maybe after this review, maybe you'll think about
Maybe you'll want access to it.
importing it, but you can get it. We're talking today about the Poco X6 Pro, which came out in January. So I guess relative to a lot of people, we're a little bit of late getting to it, but this is a phone that I was really interested in when it came out. The Poco X6 and Poco X6 Pro came out at the same time. Do not ask me what the differences are because I used to know that. And because I've had this phone for like 2 months now, I can't remember what they are. So you'll, you'll just be hearing about the Pro, and it will just direct you to maybe a page in the notes for
Yeah,
what the regular X6
we can do
is
that
all
with the
about. So
yeah.
yeah.
So, I've got it up here. I can just kind of glance through
There you
Android
go.
13 as opposed to Android 14,
Mm.
UFS 2.2 storage instead of UFS 2.4. A few minor camera differences,
I think the big
nothing
difference is the
major.
X6 doesn't have, as far as cameras, it doesn't have OIS. That's one of the big things versus the Pro.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But 64:8:2, different apertures and different like
Mm.
fields of view.
Different phone specs that you would expect. So yeah, the
Yeah,
reason
yeah,
we're talking about this, first of all, we haven't reviewed a phone in a while, and I mean a while is like what, like 2 months. It's not like we don't review phones
right,
that often here. I mean, we do.
right. It's been a minute.
It's
It's
been a
definitely
minute.
been a minute.
But like I said, I've had this phone for about 2 months, and I actually purchased this from Amazon, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My only point in saying that is that you can actually get this in the United States without importing it. If you
Right,
do, before we actually go into the review, just understand that this is the Poco X6 Pro, which is, I should mention, a division of Xiaomi,
right.
in the same way that now Redmi is like a separate brand
Mm-hmm.
and is managed as such. But Poco started out as a subsidiary or sub brand of Xiaomi that delivered, I think, were basically like really reasonably priced gaming phones for like people that were concerned about
Yeah,
gaming, and
yeah.
they share a lot of specs with a lot of phones in the and they have shared, and they still do share specs with some phones in the Redmi series. Specifically, I believe this phone is similar to a Redmi Note. I can't remember exactly which one it is at this point,
Right.
uh, but it's got its own aesthetic. It's got its own looks, and it's this is my first Poco phone. I really wanted to get my hands on one, and when I saw this phone come out, I thought, well, that's a lot of phone for the money, just in terms of like the specs. First of all, I guess we should talk about the specs. It's
Yeah,
six
probably.
point what was it? A 6.67 or
Yes.
6.7 if you want to round it up.
Yeah.
Screen. It is a an AMOLED screen. It had, I believe it's a 1080p screen if I remember correctly, with 120 hertz refresh, and
Yeah, it might. I don't know. So resolution I've got is 1220 by 2712. So whatever that works out to, that might be like a full HD plus. That could be
yeah, it's kind of in the middle, isn't it? You're kind of
kind
right.
of
Yeah, you're
flirting
right.
with 4K with 2K a
Like
little bit,
2K,
but
but not
yeah,
quite. Yeah, yeah, it is
yeah,
kind of its own thing. You're
but yeah.
absolutely right. It is a great display, which we'll see. Covered by Gorilla Glass 5, so no Victus here. But considering this
Hmm.
phone, when it came out, retailed for about $350, specifically the variant that I have, because there are different variants of this. I starts out at a 256 gigabyte version with 8 gigabytes of RAM, moves up from
Yeah.
there to the same storage with 12 gigabytes of RAM, then goes up to 512 gigabytes with that same amount of storage. So mine actually lands in that mid tier,
Mm.
256 gigabytes of storage and 12 gigabytes of RAM.
Okay. I'm
Uh,
down with that.
Actually, you know what? No, mine has
You know what's
8 gigabytes. Mine is actually the base
is
configuration,
it the
but
base
with,
model? Okay.
yeah, yeah. So 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it does have that option, like a lot of, especially Chinese originating brands do with that for the virtual RAM from that comes from your internal storage. But even at this base configuration, I do have like the one step up from like the base model, and that is the fact that I've got the vegan leather back in yellow, which
Ooh.
I personally like. It is a very polarizing color.
Mhm.
I personally really like vegan leather. I mean, we've seen in some of the phones we've reviewed in the past few months with Motorola, for example, with
Yep.
their Razor. It for one thing, your phone doesn't slide around. It has a soft touch. It's
Mhm.
easier to grip. All that
That's
kind
an
of stuff.
important distinction. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I loved about this phone, and one of the reasons I was reasoned about it, or excited about it, was reasonably excited about it. That's what I was trying to get to, was the fact that this phone has a 64 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization for
Okay.
$350. And while that's not the lowest price phone, I'm sure that you can find that has optical image stabilization. It does have Xiaomi's, what I would say is pretty good camera knowledge and
Yeah.
processing behind it. And we'll take a look at the color processing, the pictures and the video and all that good stuff in a few minutes. But as we're going over the specs, I think we've kind of covered all the basics. This does have a it's not a processor you'll find a whole lot out there in terms of other phones. I think there's only like one or two other phones, at least when I got the phone, had it, but it
Mhm.
is a MediaTek Dimensity 8300 Ultra. That's the Ultra. That's
Right.
the like defining part. And I think it's kind of like the Samsung version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 that was just a little overclocked, or it was just bent a little higher in terms of its
Yeah, I see what you yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. The 4 Galaxy versions of
exactly. So
Snapdragon 8s. I got you. I got you now.
kind of what this is like.
I was a little thrown off there for a second. I'm like, Samsung didn't make the Snapdragon. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I mean you're talking about the 4
It is a
Galaxy variants.
it is a very rare version of the Dimensity 8300. Dimensity also meaning that it is a 5G phone. It's also in the name, the Poco X6 Pro 5G. I think depending
Mhm.
on where you look. Let's see if I'm missing anything
And
here.
like,
We've covered this.
early on, I was always a little skeptical of MediaTek processors, but they've
Mhm.
actually gotten very, very good in the last couple of years. Like
Yeah, and
I don't yeah.
I was gonna say this is made on TSMC's 4 nanometer process too. So this is
Mhm.
I mean in terms of I would call this actually like in terms of where they place it like a mid-range processor. Like this
Mhm.
is
Well, sure.
if you look at like the benchmarking and stuff, it's pretty similar to like a Snapdragon 7 Gen 2.
Right, but I mean these days they've got the Dimensity 9300 out, so, which
Right. Well,
is
that just came
just
out, right? Or the
right.
9400 just came out in China, but or is coming out
Right.
soon.
Yeah, so I
But
mean
yeah,
like this
yeah.
is
I mean,
kind of yeah.
MediaTek is definitely, I think, almost apples to apples now with Snapdragon, arguably, depending on who you
Yeah,
ask,
for
and
sure.
with their high end stuff. And
Mhm.
I think you will still find their processors typically in devices that are trying to compare to a Snapdragon based processor, but at a lower price point. Still something that MediaTek, uh, you know, uh, is known for, and I presume will be known for some time. So we've talked about
Yeah.
the specs, all that kind of stuff. Let's take a look at the device.
Yeah. Oh, and that means we gotta bring up Mr.
Bring up
Slappy.
old Slappy.
So, side note about MediaTek processors, I don't know
Hmm.
if you noticed this the other day, but when Samsung launched the Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 Plus and the S10
Yes,
Ultra, they were the first flagship devices in the United States running MediaTek
I
processors.
think
I
it's the
believe that was a
9300,
Dimensity
right?
9300. If
Yeah,
I was actually just about to look that up when I started talking. I hadn't finished looking it up by the time I was done talking,
yeah.
though, because
So that's exciting. It's a
that's
big
how things
win.
work.
That's
Yeah.
a
So
big win, although
yeah,
Samsung didn't seem to want to also pass the price savings on to you, because I think that the Ultra started at like $1,100. Something
I want to say
crazy.
it was 1200 if I'm
1,200,
not
yeah. It's a
mistaken.
lot, but it is also a 14-inch tablet. But we
Right.
digress. So you
I
can
went.
see,
Yeah, I went to that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was
I'm
going to
going
say,
off on a
continue
tangent.
before I
You do
get
your
into the
thing.
phone. Okay.
um.
So
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you see on
We're a
the
little out of
packaging here.
practice. Sorry, folks.
That's right. Yeah, this is the first review we've recorded in oh gosh, at least
Couple of
2 weeks.
weeks.
couple of weeks, and
Couple of
we've
weeks.
been a lot of things going on in between then and now as well, for both of us. So,
Yep.
maybe a
Me
little rust,
too.
but we're kicking it off as we go along here. So, I've got the packaging here. I always like to just show this, even though it's not really a true unboxing, because obviously I've been using the phone for a few months. But even on the box, you can see there's that yellow signature Poco back, which you
Mhm.
also see on the back of the
Oh,
phone.
that's a nice color. I'm
It
a sucker for a
really is.
yellow phone. Like I
I am
really
too.
I've been kind of leaning towards the blue phones recently, but man, you give me a good yellow, I'm in, you know?
And honestly, there's not a lot of like this is like a searing, like if you don't like yellow, you definitely will not like
Right.
this color. But that is actually like since Poco's introduction as a brand, that has been their signature color. And so, like a lot of, uh,
Poco used to do the McLaren edition of the phone, right? That would had like the
I
yellow
thought that was
stuff on
the
it.
I thought that was OnePlus.
Oh, maybe I am thinking of OnePlus.
But
Whoops,
in any case, it does come with a
sorry,
case.
Poco.
It does come with a case and then your instructions, which I have not used because, I mean, honestly, why put? Because when they come with cases like this, it's just a TPU case, and I salute them for putting it in the box. But I mean, when I've
Sure.
got this vegan leather back, I really just don't want to mess with it too much. But it does
I
have.
respect that. I respect that. Anytime I have a vegan leather on the back of a phone, I usually do not use a case for it.
I know.
So,
And as you can see, I have not taken the charger out of the box because I have phones that will support rapid charging for this, or I'm sorry, chargers that will support rapid charging for this phone. But it does come
right.
with a 67-watt charger in the box, along with a USB-C to USB-C cable,
Hmm.
which is nice. Or is this
Yeah.
USB-A to
And
USB-C?
and it's a US charger, which is nice because sometimes you'll import those phones and you'll end up
Right?
with the European charger or
I had,
whatever. But
you can see it. It's so you can tell that I haven't used it because it's still got the little sleeve on it. And so
yeah.
there's your accessories in the box.
I'm not sure why phone makers are so concerned about shipping their plugs scratch free, but I'm always a little bit amused when I have to peel the covering off of
Well, I mean,
off of a
that
plug.
that one actually has, like, a shiny finish on it, so I don't know. There's just something about the unboxing experience, even though it is just something that goes into the landfill that I
Nah, I
do
get it. I
appreciate.
get it.
So
I
I'll
get it.
I'll see if I can bring this a little closer. See, so here's the thing that's funny about this. I thought this was like a manufacturer's defect at first, but it's kinda hard to see, but it's got this, like, marbling effect that's only on this side,
Yeah, okay, I can see it on the outside
which
there.
is really it's a choice. I don't hate it.
I actually kind of thought that was a fingerprint there.
It's not though, yeah, so
Yeah.
again, it's just like when not realizing what this was, I'm like, "What is that?" And it could because it like, across this, it fades into right
Right.
here,
Right.
which is kind of interesting, and so you can see we've
Yeah.
got the 64 megapixel, whatever you want us to
Megapixel.
call it, and
Yeah.
then the 8 megapixel wide angle or ultra wide, I'm sorry, and then a 2 megapixel macro camera that no one cares about, and then the
Right.
flash. And
Right.
this like island right here has become very much like the signature Poco slash Xiaomi slash Redmi signature. And I've seen it's kind of a similar design used across other manufacturers, but at least it's not an island that ends right here. That's just
Yeah.
like an Apple
It's like
clone.
it's like a phone manufacturer telling a Pixel, "Hold my beer."
Right,
It's
exactly.
yeah.
So again, vegan leather, soft to the touch. I love it. I love the grain. And
Mhm.
this is something that should be mentioned. This phone, and you kind of brought it up with the when we were talking about the difference between the uh, X6 and the X6 Pro. This is one of the first phones to ship with HyperOS, which is Xiaomi's new
Mm,
version of Android.
okay.
I mean, it's still basically what was it? It wasn't MiOS. What was their skin called before? Shoot, I could have told you any
Oh,
other time except but anyway, so HyperOS is their new version that started with Android 14. I mean, I'm appreciative of the fact that Xiaomi has over the years has brought
MIUI.
their version MIUI, there you go, has brought MIUI and no HyperOS closer to I would not call it stock Android at all, but closer to like
Mhm.
more of an Android standard when it comes to the way things look and feel.
Yeah,
But at the same, I mean, as an example, you can swipe to the left, and you do have the the option for I think
the
it's
Google feed.
initiated the Google feed um, by default.
Nice.
And I wish I could I guess I could bring up I don't want to bring up YouTube Studio. I was trying to think of something I could bring up to play for just a second, just so you could see the things that frustrate. I'll just play like 2 seconds of music. Okay, that won't get us
Hmm,
tagged at all.
copyright strike.
But right.
Name that tune.
But here's what drives me nuts about um, not just HyperOS slash MIUI, but just Chinese phone manufacturers and in general, and that's the fact that I can't swipe left. See that? I'll show the other thing, but you have to swipe right in order to get rid of notifications. You can't go
Oh,
either
you
way.
can't swipe them off to the left?
No, I
I
hate
get
it.
that.
It drives me nuts. And then uh, one of the holdovers from MIUI that's still aping iOS is the fact that you have separate swipe downs for your
For the
notifications
control
and
center.
for your control center, which
Yeah,
it's not a big deal. It's just if you do switch phones a lot, you have to remember that it's there.
right.
And so it sort of messes with my muscle memory. And one thing I do love about HyperOS and UI, if I remember right, you have to actually do there we go. Okay, yeah, you have to do like a two-finger pinch in instead of holding. Another thing,
Okay.
why? Why do you have to change it? Why? Why do you have to do the two-finger pinch in instead of doing the long press to get to your
Yeah, the press and hold.
customizations? I don't understand, but there are a ton of different customizations, widgets, all that kind of stuff. Plus,
Mm,
Xiaomi has their own theme store, like a lot of Chinese manufacturers do. If you look
okay.
right here, I mean, it really doesn't look dissimilar from something like Samsung. It's actually pretty similar in terms of the way it looks with the
Well,
App Store.
Samsung is probably the wrong choice because they've got their own skin, which once again is escaping me. What the hell?
One UI.
One
Well, I'm
touch,
saying
one UI.
this reminds me more
Um,
HyperOS definitely reminds me in some ways of One UI in terms of the icons and the way they do things like it. I don't know if One UI still does this, but do you remember when they would try to organize things for you with these
oh
little
yeah, yeah.
yep, with and
Oh,
it
that's
definitely
interesting. What
will
do
do
those
that
do?
for you. Hmm?
What are those?
If you
Are
go to
those
like
like categories?
personalization, it'll show you personalization apps,
Oh
lifestyle
shit.
apps, and
Okay.
yeah. So for
Okay.
some people, that might be fine. I don't particularly
Interesting.
care. Also, it's kind of
Huh.
interesting
And
that
that's just
social
part of
media
the app
apps are put
store, huh?
under tools. Yeah, that's part of the app store. Um,
Wow, that's wild.
but that's something that One UI or Samsung Skin used to do to give you options like that, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly, and maybe even
I don't recall that, but
HTC's
or maybe
skin.
HTC. It's been
But
forever since I've used an HTC
I
phone.
know. Me too, although
It's
they're
been
still out
forever
there.
since anyone's used an HTC phone.
Well, no, they're
Anyone in
the
America.
in an ornament. That is very true, and this is actually where it's different in terms of the organization of things. I don't
Hmm.
hate it.
Okay.
Like About Phone is actually the first thing. There's your Hyper OS,
Really?
and yeah,
Okay.
yep, which is kind of interesting. That's definitely organized, and then and system apps because they do have their own system apps, which I
Hmm.
find some of the system apps also update to the Play Store, so you can I guess you can get it either way. And
Gotcha.
then your Wi-Fi mobile networks and all that kind of stuff. I guess
Yeah.
it's and then you have your whole
It's just
separate
different.
Xiaomi account. It is, and then
Yeah.
it's not unintuitive, it's just different from Android. I don't dislike it, but those are just some of the difference that you'll find between high
Huh.
differences that you find with HyperOS versus like a Pixel, for example. Just the organization of stuff, but not so different that if you're an Android someone that's comfortable with Android, and especially if you've used multiple different kinds of skins or themes or whatever you want to call launchers, whatever you want to call it, depending on
Right.
on top of Android, it's not going to be that dissimilar. Honestly, the biggest difference is that just the splitting of
The
the notifications versus which I mean, I guess if which has always kind of been the thing they've always stolen a little bit from iOS a lot more in the past actually.
right. Right.
Xiaomi
Yeah.
has. So
It's a bit of a holdover, but if
it
it's the
is.
last holdout, we can live with that.
So let's
So.
talk about the fact that this has a lot of specs for the money, 256 gigabytes of
Hmm.
storage. I believe I paid 350 something dollars for this phone with tax. And with that, you're competing with basically like a Moto G Power. I guess, or the Moto G 5G, maybe the Moto G Stylus, something around there. And
Yeah.
last year's Pixel A device, kind of in that range of pricing. We're
No, the A
talking three.
series that was like, wasn't that was $499, wasn't it?
That's why I said last year's. Like,
Oh,
like,
like
like,
if you were to buy last year's this year. I
correct.
gotcha.
Last year's
Okay.
Pixel A. That I mean, that's you're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like
yeah.
just a little. It's sub mid range, but it's not in that like $200 range. You're kind of in that like.
Yeah.
So
And
if you're
then
talking,
oh, I was gonna say actually right now on Amazon that phone is 284. So you
is it
should
really
like
with
yeah, so you should like
with
try to get a
the
refund.
wow? That's awesome. No, Amazon's very bad about price matching even themselves.
Sure they are.
But the last time I checked, it was down to a little like 312 or something. But it also like if you watch like if you watch like a price track on Amazon for this phone, it kind of does this. But this is
mm,
getting closer to the end of its life cycle. I'm sure we'll see like because I think this was introduced in January of last year, so I'm sure we'll.
okay.
However, this phone is promised, I believe, 3 years of updates and OS
3
updates.
whole
So
years?
yeah, honestly, for a
I
mid-range phone, that's not bad. I mean, that's
no, no,
better
no, it's
than
not. It's not.
it's really not. And I enjoy using the software, does not bother me at all. It's like I said, just other than just the little things that are just annoyances, like
Mm,
not being able to swipe on certain things, it's fine. Your muscle memory just has to get used to it. And after you've used it for, like a week to 2 weeks, you just don't even think about it until you switch to something else. And then you have to, to relearn everything else. I'm just gonna turn it over here for a second because I do want to talk about the cameras.
I just
It's a
real quick,
little
I just wanted to do a
contrasty
quick
here. So
quick share here real quick. Here's the
yeah.
price map for the Poco for the
Okay.
last since March. So it started up at like, the 370s area up here and it's down to the
Interesting.
284. So
Interesting.
can camel
Good
camel
time to
camel
buy
back up.
good time to buy it for sure. And
Yeah.
of course, as
Yeah.
always, we'll put a link in the show notes if you want to purchase it. And
Damn right.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So all
And
right.
that's
Anyways, that was just a
at
quick one.
$280. Honestly, like this is a heck of a phone. And honestly, I'm going to show you, like the. I'm not a gamer. I always talk about this. I have played games on it, and it's one of those
Mhm.
phones that does have like the gaming center that Xiaomi includes that optimizes things for you, all that kind of thing.
Okay.
It's fine, but like the kind of games that I play on my phone are like get in and get out, like snackable kind of stuff. So I really
Sure.
never have to deal with things like my phone overheating, even though this is like a technically a gaming phone brand. But one of the things that really
Right.
appealed to me about this phone was the fact, as I said earlier in the review, that it had OIS on the main camera, and that in some of the reviews that I had read of it early on, that said the camera was really pretty good. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had a chance to test that out, and we're going to bring up some photo samples now, and then some video samples. You can decide for yourself if this is a camera that you'd want to use. Maybe you want to rearrange it. I guess we can kill
Yeah, we
that.
can slappy. Yeah. Yeah, we're
And
fine this way, I think.
are you okay? Okay, this
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So this is in no particular order. Some stills that I took. I tried to take a range of low light and what I would call it just good light photos and or normal lighting
Yeah.
photos in different states, whether it's like a still
And
photo. In this
and this
case, the first
particular shot is a motion shot, so
it's an
that's good.
action shot. This is
Yeah.
actually one of the better ones that I got, and I will say this is not its strength.
Okay.
Motion does tend to it just takes a while for it to lock on. I got a lot of photos in this series where she was just blurred.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah. However, I will say that everything is well exposed. Like in terms of like the accuracy of the color and things like that, even when
Mm-hmm.
she was blurred, I do find that this to be the color processing and everything on this camera to be very likable, like very even on you see this is the one that I selected just to show, but the skin tones and everything are natural.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not zooming in on it or anything here. Let me actually switch to my window here so we can switch. But yeah, it's a good shot
Yeah.
for what it is for an action shot. Let me see. Okay, so this is actually a funny
Oh,
story. So I was supposed to pick up my
okay.
daughter, and it turns out that she was actually going to Girl Scouts. Girl Scouts. So I'm standing out there waiting, and the bus just drives past, and she sees me. looks out the window and waves as she's going by.
That's kind of fun. So wait,
So
now let me ask you this: did you have your phone out, like
yes,
ready
because
to take a picture of her as she pulled up or something, or
so I was going to do a series of shots with her of her getting off the bus,
right?
forgetting the
Okay,
fact that she was actually riding the bus to a different town to, meet my wife to go do Girl Scouts. And so
gotcha. Okay,
I did already have my camera out, yeah, and I mean,
okay,
you know how a bus is, you can see it coming down the road, so I'm like, I
right.
just didn't stop, and then I remembered, and so, yeah,
Yeah,
I got this shot of her, but anyway, so, um
that's funny though.
the color processing maybe is a little bit oversaturated in this, at least in this shot. You can see how, at least on on my screen, the sky is like really rich blue. The stop
Right.
sign on the side of the bus is very saturated. It's not a bad thing, and I think this is a choice that the majority of smartphone manufacturers actually make these days, is to like oversaturate things, maybe overprocess the details and things like that. But
Hmm.
you can see the difference between, I mean, at least here. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. Um, it's actually not too bad considering this was a motion shot. I mean, you can start to see some JPEG artifacts in the trees and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
I mean, this is definitely more than social media usable, I think.
sure.
Uh, I enjoy this camera though. It's fun to shoot with. This was a moth. You can actually see
Okay.
the details on the tongue, just as
Yeah.
taken with the main camera. And, to me, this is just all I did was tap to focus and got the shot, which is what I tend to do.
Oh
I
man.
don't play a
Yeah.
lot of around with things like, ProMotion. This is not a portrait mode shot. This is actually natural bokeh with it.
Okay.
I thought, and
Oh, that's really good.
is really good, especially for a $350 camera. I'm telling you.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is I went for like maximalist low light here. So this is actually outside my
Okay.
office with the light from the interior of my office shining on it. It
Okay.
honestly is not too bad. It's a little dead looking as far as the colors are concerned,
Mm-hmm.
but for it being a low light shot, I mean, we're talking seriously low light, and this is not flash, that's actually, like, the natural light from,
Yeah.
or not natural, but the light coming from, rather than, like, we have in the
Yeah.
flash to expose
Oh,
that.
I know. I've been in your backyard at night.
That's right, you have. It's not terrible, it's just the colors are a little dead.
Yeah.
Here's a better one. This is actually from the kitchen window.
Okay.
Again, I don't hate it considering the available light, because I think this is one of the most challenging situations for a smartphone
Oh,
camera.
sure.
When
Sure.
you have just, like, one light source and it's trying to expose for color and all that, I mean, this is actually what it looked like to my eye. So, again,
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty impressed with it, even if you zoom in, like, you're not gonna find the details that crisp,
Right.
but and that's, like, what OIS is for. Front-facing camera, not great. Not horrible, but not great, but the details are pretty
Right.
soft. Again, this is in a kind of a terrible lighting situation, so I can't knock it too bad. I was particularly pleased with this photo. This is again from the same series that I shot in really, really low light, where I'm in the dark and all I did was focus on the light sources that were in front of me. And I think I actually focused on the red vehicle that you see there.
Okay.
But but I mean,
So you were
this is
inside for this shot, correct?
no, I was outside.
Oh, this is outside.
This
Okay.
is in my
Okay.
backyard. You can see a little, I don't know if you can see my cursor here in my, but
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
my
Yeah. I
fence
can see your
there,
cursor. Okay.
and all this is and this is actually across, the red car is across the street, but everything is really well exposed. Like, this is almost exactly what I saw with my eyes, except that there was a little more, light on some of the stuff that was in my foreground. But considering
Okay.
the choices that it made, I thought that this was, again, in a dark light situation, it did a good job of getting, of focusing on what I told it to focus on, while still getting some of the stuff in the foreground, as far as details are concerned.
Yeah.
Alright,
Yeah. Definitely.
okay. I think that might be my last photo. So
Okay.
let me go to, I'm gonna share now's video, because I actually thought the video with this was pretty good in parts. Let's
Okay.
see. I always have share screen, window. Okay. Not so much the front facing camera video. I will say that.
Okay.
Okay. You wanna bring it up?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay. So this is again just because I didn't name these. I'm just the first thing you're seeing is a front-facing camera video with
Right.
me just kind of panning around.
We're not hearing audio, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. So I said this now. This is truly low light camera
Yeah.
performance,
Yeah,
and
that's
you can
pretty that's
see
about as low as you get.
yeah, exactly. Literally, the only light source is that kitchen window.
So does the screen do the flash thing when you're shooting a selfie video at night?
It
You
did
know, like how
not
it'll like
like a wall
turn
like
on
a
like
total white
yeah.
screen. It did not.
There might be an option to turn that on, just
There might be.
something
That's
to
actually
look
a good
into, but
I don't it's funny. I should poke more into options that like I mean, especially with phones like this that are from a Chinese market manufacturer because there are so many buried settings in the camera for you to do
right.
so many different looks and things like
But I
that
think
with.
a lot of people are going to be using it on default settings. So I mean, there's definitely an argument to be made for just like picking up the phone and going with it, you know?
I'll be honest, and that's how I try to use the camera. I and
Yeah.
some may argue that that's not the best way to use it, and I'm sure
Sure.
that there are really in-depth video reviews out there if you want to,
Right.
for
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
specifically in the camera settings. Um, I like Xiaomi's camera app though. It's easy to use. I don't
Okay.
have any issues with it. It's definitely one of those that's easy to jump into and let's see. If I remember right. Trying to remember how to go to the next video. I don't think it's that. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is from that same series of where I was shooting the flowers a few
Okay.
months ago. I'm stationary. That's actually the wind blowing the flower around.
Okay.
You can actually tell by the background
Yeah.
that I'm just focusing on it. And I did a little just manual zoom there. But look how crisp
You
that
got a
is.
friend.
And it's unfortunate that you can't hear the audio because the microphones on this camera are actually really pretty good. I'm hearing it now
Yeah.
in my headphones,
Okay.
and there's a sense of space with it, which I really like. Also, and
Okay.
this is something we don't talk about enough, is maybe the speakers on this phone or on phones in general. But this has really good, like in terms of just for speakerphone calls and stuff like that. For
Hmm.
music, not so much. Just like most phones, especially when you get into the louder volumes where it starts to get a little tinny and maybe
Sure.
distort a little bit. But for like
Sure.
speakerphone calls, it's awesome. Okay,
Cool.
rewind this. And this is me walking with the rear camera,
And we're walking.
and we're walking. I thought the stability was actually pretty good, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah,
little
looks good.
visual shake. Yeah.
A
Again,
little
for a
bit of a
$350 camera,
yeah,
not too
a
bad.
little bit
Here's
of
the
a
same with the
yeah.
front-facing camera, which is much
Okay.
better in regular light.
It looks like you're on. It looks like you're running the camera on a track, which
It
is nice.
does. I honestly, if I remember right, I honestly felt like the front-facing camera was better with shake than the
And you know what? Usually they are with like most phones.
huh.
There usually are, and I think the reason is because a selfie camera is going to be a selfie camera, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to
Right.
pretend to know exactly what the thought process that goes into this, but a selfie camera is usually going to be focused on a subject, so it doesn't have to compensate for anything. It can just find the subject and go, whereas with a rear camera it can be focused on a subject, it can be focused
It's
on
definitely got
nothing,
more to
it can be
think about
focused,
for sure. But
it
at the
has
same
more
time,
to think about. Yeah.
right. But at the same time, lesser phones will still give you, I mean, as far as eliminating like the steps and things like that, I felt like just the amount of shake that it eliminated on the front facing camera was better, even though the
Yeah.
front facing camera does not have OIS. But yeah,
Right.
I but
Right.
you can see here, this is sort of my normal walking track when I'm not going somewhere. Golly, I needed a
Yeah.
haircut at this point. When I
No
make a
idea what
turn
you're talking
here,
about.
and then I believe I walk into like a lower light area just to sort of
Okay.
challenge it a little bit. Okay, so this is from the low light, extreme low light.
This
And
isn't when you're in
again,
your backyard. Okay.
this is again going back to the front facing camera, or I'm sorry, the rear camera.
Yeah.
Again, I'm considering that this is low light. Like the
Yeah. There's a little
it's
bit of
not
a judder there, but it's not bad
it's really not bad for a
for a $350 camera.
$350 phone. Exactly. Which
Yeah.
and I'm trying to make it actually focus on something here. Again, it just I really feel like of all the features of this phone, what really makes this phone stand out is the camera. Like, honestly, I don't
Okay.
think I've ever used a camera that's this good at this price point. It's
Yeah, that makes sense.
it reminds me of like an iPhone from 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I mean that as like a compliment.
I was gonna say that's a bold claim, but okay.
Reminds me. I'm not saying it's the same. It's just like the in terms of the pictures it
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
takes.
yeah. Yeah,
Maybe
no,
other
I
than maybe
totally get
some of
it.
the oversaturation with some of the processing, but it's one of those cameras that I feel like I can take out and I'm almost always gonna get a good picture except for, subjects in motion. With that, you definitely need to hold down the shutter button and just let it go and then pick one from, like, the
Yeah,
50
do a
that you get.
burst.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's legit. I mean, all told, it sounds like a really complete package. One thing to worth mentioning is the very first line on the Amazon listing is USA market only on T-Mobile, Mint, Tello, or any other T-Mobile MVNO. So, if you're on AT&T or Verizon, shop elsewhere.
I will
But if
say
you're on a T-Mobile,
yeah, and
go ahead.
I'm on T-Mobile. I do not get the high capacity or ultra capacity, I think it's called. I forget what band that is, but it's the one
Right.
that I get on, like, if I'm using a US market phone where I'm getting like 300 to 500 megabits down, but it
Yeah.
gives me comparable performance on the 5G to what I get on 4G with Verizon in my local area, if not higher. And I am
Okay.
actually getting 5G. So it is definitely usable in the US. It's not a phone that you're
Yeah.
gonna find where it's, like years ago where you'd throw a SIM in it and you'd be on like 2 years
LTE.
ago tiers
You'd be on
of
3G or something
right,
like that. Yeah.
exactly. So
I
yeah,
get you.
I
I
really
get you.
like this phone. I'm not suggesting that you import it, but if you do, or if you buy it, then it is still, here's the bigger caveat than using it on a US market carrier on a phone that's not meant for it is just the fact that I don't believe you're going to have a warranty from Xiaomi because Xiaomi doesn't have service centers here in the United States for phones. And so you're pretty much on your own if you have any issues with it after the
Mhm.
return, the return um, area, what 30 days or whatever you get from the manufacturer, the retailer that you purchased it from. So, but yeah,
Right. Right.
for the money, honestly, it's a really good phone, and this is my first Xiaomi phone that I've used or in a few years since we were last reviewed the Redmi 10 back when we were audio only.
Mm.
And my first Poco phone, so I was pleasantly surprised, and I look forward to trying another one.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a time, I want to say it was about 2 years ago or so, maybe a year and a half, when I actually ordered a Poco phone from Amazon. And I don't remember which one it was. I don't even remember actually if we reviewed it for the
We did
podcast.
not. We did not.
All I remember is that I ended up returning it because it was just like, it's fine, but it's like not amazing. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna go ahead and send it back. But I want to say it was probably somewhere in this neighborhood of this price point of like,
yeah.
$200-300 or something like that. So anyway, cool. Yeah, this seems like a really decent deal. And if you're on T-Mobile and you're looking for a real bang for your buck kind of deal, this might do it. So any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I think I would just say that using a phone like this with this unique design, relatively speaking, with like it's like the yellow color, the amount that you get for your money in terms of the camera and stuff makes me sad that we're so limited with our selection of like official phones here in the United States
Yeah.
because it is like it's I'm
I
glad
get
that
it.
a place like Amazon exists to allow me to how to now be able to because it used to be if you wanted a phone like this, you had to go through, like a small retailer in order
Right.
to get it, and now you
Or
can actually
like an
get
overseas
or an oversea you're
retailer with
right,
it.
and
Yeah.
it just I wish more people got to experience something different besides like, because it's usually mostly Samsung or an iPhone
Samsung,
for
iPhone, OnePlus, Google,
Motorola. It's pretty much it.
Motorola.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it seems like a legit deal. So, if you are in the market for a new one, give it a look. There will be a link to it in the show notes as well as that camel price history. I'll toss that in there as well, so you can take a look. Yeah, if you're looking for a new phone, this would be a good one to. This could be a good one to grab.
Especially right
You're
now with it down to like
budget.
$280. It was, I mean, because these were
Yeah.
close to 400 when it first came out.
You know what we say?
Especially
We say get on that.
get on that, man.
On that. But and speaking of getting on that, we're gonna get on that and go ahead and play our outro. So we will see you in the next video. Oh, hi there. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, then you obviously liked what you saw. So why not take it a few small steps further? How about you drop a thumbs up on this video and maybe hit that subscribe button?
And while you're there, move that pointer over a few pixels and click the bell. All of that will ensure that we get noticed on the YouTubes, and we can make more of these videos just for you.
And if you want to go even a little bit further, you can head over to patreon.com/benefitofthedoud and sign up for as little as just $2 per month. And for that, you'll get early access to our videos and some bonus content that we don't show on the main channel.
Plus, we're cooking up new perks and benefits all the time. So go to patreon.com/benefitofthedoud and sign up today.
That's patreon.com/benefitofthedoud. And as always, we thank you for watching and for giving us the benefit of the Doud.